Okay, let's see. I did hit record here, didn't I? Yeah. Okay, let's get started. So it is the last week of classes here. We have a couple people in class. I'm recording this, and I've been noticing I get like 12 to 18 watches per video. So I hope that the people who aren't in class are watching the video because someone's watching the video, so that's good. So um, let's talk about what we're doing this week and next week and how things look. Um, so, um, Mainly we're going to be working on the final project this week and next week. There's a learning activity related to the final project we'll do today here. So just remind yourself of the final project. 3.1 was design. You should have submitted that on Sunday. I haven't had a chance to read those over. I kind of got pulled down to the Twin Cities with a kind of family emergency with a brother-in-law in the hospital and stuff over the weekend. So it's just kind of thrown my schedule off. He's back home, but it was just spent the weekend down in the Twin, well, ever since Thursday through Sunday down in the Twin Cities. So threw my schedule off. Okay, so, but I'll try to get you, I'll try to read through your design documents and concept briefs and stuff and give you some feedback on that as we go forward. Mainly, I just want to see if I think, you're, in the entirely wrong direction or something, that I don't think this is going to work as a final project. I'll try to get you some suggestions on pulling you back or directing you in the right direction for that to make sure you have a smooth final project here for this. And then this week is this build and pivot project. I originally was going to have this due on Sunday, and I changed this to be due this coming Sunday instead of that. And again, this is the next step where you are going to add some features to your project. So feature build up. So you kind of started with a minimal viable product, hopefully last week, or just some basic thing that was kind of working. And now you want to try adding some features to it for that, build it out. And we'll talk some more about how to kind of set that up and do that in the learning activity this week, although we'll be looking at refactoring it in preparation of this feature build up. So again, look at it and stuff. So for example, here's what I did. We had this weather app, and it was really bothering me that I never quite knew how to type in the city name. So I added this ability to start typing a city and it would pop up possible city names. And then I could select from the list of that stuff. So I like, so that I would, just the type ahead. It's not a very complicated feature, but it is one there. Also added like authentication. So you log into this website and log out, and then it remembers, right now it just remembers your home city or the last city you used and pops that up. I'm not sure if it actually pops that up yet, but I mean, again, I like on my current weather app, I can have a set of like standard cities I've searched for or I use regularly, and then I can just pop up that list. Now I can't do that yet, but that would be a feature I could do for this here. So that's the feature build out you'll be doing. And again, there's no set requirements on it. You just should be adding some cool features to your app. The other thing is a pivot here. And this is a big thing in startup companies is that you must, you should think of what you're trying to do and then adapt, be adaptable, changing to how the changing environment, climate, what you're seeing, what you're feeling there, deciding on, adjusting their things. So sometimes this pivot is really big, like we're going to start a company that's doing a weather app. And then now we're doing that. I realize, I don't really think there's a lot of weather apps, but maybe I want to do a blood pressure app instead. So I'm going to pivot to blood pressure, but I kind of keep the same kind of interfuser login. But now I'm going to, rather than getting data from the weather, I'm going to get it from maybe a blood pressure monitor or something like that. So that would be a big pivot where we're switching fields and stuff like that. But again, maybe you suddenly realize that there's 1,000 weather apps over there, but there's not a good app to interface with a specialized blood pressure monitor that you're aware of there. So again, so it could be a big pivot like that. It could be just a smaller pivot where you're thinking, oh, right now this weather app is just shows you the weather there. Maybe I think of a pivot for. Well, one thing I always want is I want a weather app that tracks. Like I look at the forecast and it says it's going to snow tonight. I want a weather app that tells me that I can look at tomorrow and say how accurate was the weather forecast a day ago and 3 days ago. So I actually want to see look back in time and say 3 days ago it said it was going to snow today. Is it snowing today? And I like to rate or be able to see how accurate the weather is, because sometimes it seems like the weather predictions isn't as accurate as I'd like it to be. So maybe I'm looking at more at collecting weather forecasts and rating, how accurate they are in certain conditions or something like that, rather than just providing the weather forecast. So again, that might be a pivot. How would I go about doing that? And again, feel free to use AI, talk to AI, help AI brainstorm ideas of a new direction, a new pivot, something else you'd want to do there. But we want you to, you have to do some sort of pivot at this point, some sort of alteration, of course, or features or what you're doing with your app. Okay, so that's what you're doing. Next week, you will present at the CIS showcase on Monday. I think most of you on-campus students are very familiar with the CIS showcase and how it works. So you'll just come here, show your app, I'll wander around, see your app, and you'll show it to it. And you'll impress the, Java 1 students who are working on things, stuff like that. Online students, you can record a 3 to 5 minute video there for that. So, and then your final submission and retrospective is due, I think I said Thursday. This is the day of our final exam. Yeah, Thursday by that. So you have until Thursday. If for some reason you need an extension for that, you have lots of stuff doing, let me know. I don't think I have to turn in grades until later, but right now I have Thursday as the deadline for that. Okay. So what are we going to do this week, you ask? So we're going to look at some software design principles, and we're going to do this little learning activity on your final project to implement some of a software architecture setup. And kind of the reason with that is if you do that, it probably will make pivoting or adding features easier to do if you have a good architecture. So I'm just going to go here and do a quick overview. So some of you have had the software design course, the 3285 course, and basically that course is based on the solid design principles. Solid is an acronym, and we do one of the letters we spend at least a week on each of these letters during that class and looking at how that works. But we're doing that in C#, there. So this is just a quick introduction or overview of how, again, with AI, you're doing this rapid prototype. Often it's not doing the best coding and the best architecture. So, we have this term technical debt. We're accumulating this technical debt there. And so what we want to do is push some architecture onto our model, onto our, app there. And a good way to do that is with the solid principles here. One thing it's good is that when you talk about solid to the AI, it kind of gets it in the right frame set. So, oh yeah, we're doing architecture, we're at this level, we're doing it, and sets a framework for the AI to think about this sort of stuff and what it should be doing. So I think it's useful to pick in, it doesn't have to be solid, but that's it. I like that because it's a pretty general, well-known set of principles that it's not focused on one thing. So different solid principles, again, we're not going to do it. We have a course on this, but just a reminder, and again, you may not have seen this before, but single responsibility principle is the first one. A class or a widget should have only one function or one, reason. It should do only one thing or have only one reason to change there. And again, we often get a typical thing, and that's what I'm gonna have this. I still have my main.dart is just huge here. So that's one thing I'm going to look at here is can I make my main.dart file smaller there. So we can break things down, open close principle there. Often we want to add, not modify the existing kind of structure, but add to it in different ways. So maybe add a wrapper to a class rather than modifying the class itself. Liskov substitution principle is that, you can treat different parts of your class or subclass object the same. This is sometimes hard to apply, but I kind of like this example. And again, I saw this the other day, and you may not be doing unit testing, but in my program, it said the AI created a whole bunch of unit tests to try to fix some problems, but the unit tests were breaking my app because the unit tests were not treating the database interface in the same way as the actual data app was using there. And so although the app was working, I was having trouble running things because the interface was breaking. I mean, the unit tests were breaking here. So again, that's good. Interface segregation, often we want to just put an interface here. And sometimes we have too big of an interface, what we sometimes call a God object here. We often see this with Firebase, where we just have one Firebase service that does everything for Firebase, provides authentication, provides the user profile into Firestore and stores the weather data and stores, that sort of stuff. And so we want to break that up and do smaller things. Dependency inversion or dependency injection idea. Again, we at this level are not often doing full dependency inversion, which are complicated systems of passing or having a system that automatically creates objects based on interfaces. But we're often setting it up so that we can pass an object to another object to use. So if you have your a database provider, you could provide it your data, your Firebase object to use for the database or something like that. Another way to look at this is more cross-platform architecture. We've mentioned, hopefully you've seen some of these before, model view model. We talked about this where in like Kotlin or Android, there was a view model that's kind of a permanent structure outside of fragments and activities here. And again, Flutter, we sometimes use this. If you're doing more of a React stuff, you might be using kind of a separation of the hooks and the logic in hooks, and then a database repository. So you'll have your UI, you'll have your hooks, and then you have your database service or whatever you're calling that sort of stuff. So, and again, another way of looking at this common thing we hear is this clean architecture, which again, we're layering things where again, you have your business logic and your business logic is separated from your database and is separated from the UI. And in this case, like you have a layer in between and you make sure that that layer doesn't have any Firebase code in it, so it doesn't know the database, or it's calling through an interface there, and it doesn't have any Flutter code either, so that you could unplug or plug in different architectures or here. So again, think about you can also use this sort of kind of architectures when you're talking about. So what are you going to do? Because you're talking about me talking. Okay, just a quick thing. I have a couple optional resources in here. One is Hive. If you want to add, if you're using Flutter and you want to use a local SQL database rather than Firebase, because again, sometimes we run into trouble with Firebase. I suggest the Hive library in Flutter provides you good access to a MySQL implementation there. We used to cover it in this class. We just, because we're moving stuff around, we don't cover it anymore. But if you're looking for a local SQL database to use, I suggest Hive for that. Also, you can ask, if you're moving to multiple screens and navigation between multiple screens, there's a whole navigation format in Flutter, just like there is in like React or something like that, a standard way of navigating in cookies and going so the back arrow works correctly and all that sort of stuff with these apps. We don't see as much of that these days because we're doing much more of maybe a single screen app where the screen changes a lot depending on what you do. But again, you can look at that, and there's some resources on that. Okay, let's go down here to our learning activity. So your job is we're going to ask AI for some suggestions on architectural improvements. We're going to select one, and then we're going to have AI refactor our code to implement that there. So we're going to ask AI to identify architecture issues. So again, I'm going to go over here. I have it. Now you can ask it for our whole model, so maybe I could say, here, do I give a sample prompt? Let's just use that sample prompt. I don't know if that's the best prompt, but it was okay. It does mention solid principles and stuff like that. Okay. I'm going to change it a little bit. Yeah. I'm just going to say review this app in Firebase Studio. Please analyze the code, identify architecture. See how it goes. I'm going to switch this from Flash to Pro on this one. I'm going to go to 3. See if I can do this in 3.0. I find this architectural stuff sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it's useful when it's looking at bigger code to use a thinking model. I don't have code for that. Let's try, see if I can do it with this. No, I guess I don't have. Oops, yeah, I have to switch this back to the built-in model, I guess. Okay. I think next week or the week after that, the college is going to open up Gemini and give us access to a fuller version of Gemini and stuff on campus and stuff like that. We'll talk about that a little bit more on Thursday, some of the other accesses. So, but that doesn't help you with the final project. So I'm giving it this app and asking it to suggest things. I'm hoping it just suggests things it doesn't implement them there. So we'll see. So again, it should be suggesting some things to take, and you can pick one of these and do it. Now, the other thing is you can look at like a specific file. So I'm really worried my main.dart is just really large, and it's broken down nicely where I have this built. I have separate widgets, but each widget, they're not in their own file. They're in just different methods here. So I would like to do that. So I'm going to read through this and see if there are anything that talks about Dart So yeah, main.dart is responsible for a wide range of tasks, considering this sort of stuff, and also directly calls Firebase service to do that. So I'm going to ask it to make some, can you recommend 3 specific changes to main.dart? Which would each separate out some functionality from this file into other files. Describe each possible change and let me select which I want to implement. So again, I'm going to point it to the main.dart file. It mentioned it there, which doesn't surprise me, but I'm going to try to point it to that and see what it comes up with. Okay, so I'm not, I don't really understand how themes work in Flutter, to tell you the truth, so I'm not going to touch that. Maybe I should have AI touch that, but I'm not going to worry about that. The home screen, I'm going to leave that there, but I'm going to decompose Flutter, these UIs, into reusable widgets here. So you implement number 3. Decompose main.dart into smaller reusable widgets. Okay. So again, that's what you want to do. You want to ask AI some problems. You want to select one of these. Now, I want to try to tie this into this. Really, the most common one is a single responsibility principle, where you have these big things of code and you want to break it down into problems. So I would say probably 75% of you students will choose that one there and for that. And in fact, in the software design class, we spent 3 weeks on that one and 1 week on each of the other ones. So, and then I'm asking it to refactor the code, and then I'm going to do the reflection on this there. And again, we're doing this, so I'm going to have it do this, help me with the reflection when it gets done here. Okay. So it should create a bunch of new widget files. It should. Now, one thing to note is that I've already split off a fair amount of stuff here earlier. I have separate data models set up. I have separate weather provider here. I have services for authentication and for Firestore. So I already have a pretty good model. That's why it probably wasn't changing those. So you might want to look at, if you don't have a separate files for your data model or your providers here. Again, so one thing to look at is that, like, how hard it would be to switch this from using Firestore or Firebase to using something else, or to switch to AWS services for the authentication or stuff like that, and how much of the code would have to be changed for something like that. So yeah, I already have a fair amount of this done because I think I asked it to do that when I was developing stuff earlier. The service is currently unavailable. Okay. So again, that's all you have to do. Submit your reflection on what you did. Now, just a quick note, this is not the same thing as 3.2. 3.2 in your project, that's here, build, add features, and pivot. So 3.2 is to change what your app is doing, adding features to it, and pivoting, changing the features. We are simply refactoring it. We are not in this learning activity. We're not adding any functionality to your app. We're just restructuring it So, kind of the idea is that, okay, we're going to go in and I often think, I'm going into my, garage and I'm going to build something or, work on this project. I'm going to first go in and reorganize my shelves and make sure everything's in the right spot before I start my project. So that's what we're doing here is we're just going in and reorganizing, making sure everything's in nice little boxes and compartments so that I can, when I'm doing my features and stuff, everything is well structured there. So that's what the learning activity is, just refactoring, no new functionality. So just so you know, this is different than 3.2 because of that. And I would suggest you do, well, you can do it in any order, but I think if you do this before you do 3.2, it might make 3.2 easier. Okay, I think I'm done talking now. Okay, one more quick thing. Thursday, we're going to work on the final project. We're not going to cover much. The only thing we'll cover is I'll talk about ways to use the material in this course in future jobs. And I'll also talk a little bit about the new Google certificates that are going to be opened up free to students and you can get credit for them. And so in a couple weeks, so over break, you can start doing Google certificates for credit there. So I'll mention those. The email should be coming out next week to students on that. So, but I'll just mention those two things, and then, Thursday we'll have time to work on the projects, the final projects in class. Okay, now I'm really going to stop talking. Okay, and then just a quick reminder that you want to submit your reflections, and you can use AI to do. Usually, I don't want you to do AIs to do reflection, but since we're doing so much AI in this class, I think I won't complain about it here. So I'm actually just taking this stuff. I pasted it into here after it. So it did a good job. It broke all these widgets up. Now my main Dart was much smaller. That just calls these other widgets a lot here. And I have all these widgets set up in my widgets folder. So I asked it to here, write a short description of each. I asked it to just give me a single sentence about each, because again, I want you to read this, what AI writes before you submit it, and I don't want you to just copy and paste a huge long description. So I just say, give me a single sentence of each of the bullet points. It does. This is short enough so you can read it, you can edit it, you can submit it, and then I can read it. And it's not, otherwise AI would give me a page-long description of this. I don't want that. So we want a short summary of these 4 points. Read through this and see if you understand it, make any tweaks to it, and then submit it. And then I was just looking at this and saying, well, there's a lot of stupid theme data stuck into my widget. I should have done that. So I'm actually going to go through and do what it did. What the other suggestion was is to centralize the theme configuration into a dedicated file. So I'm actually going to do that next, because now I'm realizing that since I took out that other stuff. So, okay, and just submit that. All right. For online students, we've had a number of in-class students struggling with their app today, having problems with things and getting a number of errors. So a couple things to remember is that this is stored in GitHub. So if something breaks, you can tell AI to go back to what was last pushed in GitHub and restore to that working version. So again, and that's a good thing to do, is when you have a good working version, go in here and submit that. And I often say this working version and then do a short description, so I know what version to go back to sometimes there. So see how that goes. Contact me if you're having trouble with this stuff. And again, I've been doing this in Flutter, but again, for your final project, you might be working in Android Studio, you might be working in Kotlin or in Flutter, or just doing React or something like that. So, and that's all fine. Okay, I'm closing up for the day.